Okay, today we're going to be talking about the muscle cell. So one thing to keep in mind is that you can use the term muscle cell or muscle fiber interchangeably. The reason being is that a muscle cell, for instance, here in the bicep, right here in the arm, so when you're showing everybody your muscles, this is your bicep. Your bicep muscle cell can go from the elbow all the way up to the shoulder. So it's very long and it's very thin, like a long string. So that's the reason sometimes you will hear somebody call it a muscle fiber, because it's a long string-like cell. So it looks like a fiber. So don't let that confuse you when your professors go back and forth using those terms muscle cell versus muscle fiber. They're the exact same thing. Okay, so this is the model we're going to be looking at. This is the model of the muscle cell. This is the front side, and this is the back side. And we're going to be discussing the back side first, and then we'll go into the front side. Okay, so on the back here, you'll see this area right here. This is called the endomysium. So the endomysium is a connective tissue layer that surrounds the muscle cell. And it's going to have your capillary networks in here, so that this muscle cell can get a blood supply, because it is a living tissue, so it must have a blood supply. And that blood supply is going to come in the capillary networks here in the endomysium. In the endomysium also you have nerve fibers, and those nerve fibers are going to send a signal to this muscle cell to tell it to contract. So you have to have those nerve fibers, and those nerve fibers will be found here in this endomysium. Also in the endomysium, you have these swollen splat-looking cells. These are called your myosatellite cells. These are going to be the nurse cells. What they do is they help repair the damaged portions of a muscle cell. So if you tear a muscle cell, these nursing cells, called your myosatellite cells, will come in and help repair that area. Okay? So again, the three things you're going to find within this endomysium is going to be your capillary network, your nerve fibers, and your myosatellite cells. Okay? So these myosatellite cells are going to be stem cells that help repair any damaged areas of the muscle cell. Okay, so now we're going to flip around, and we're going to look at the front side here. You'll see this skin layer right here. This is the plasma membrane of the muscle cell. But in the muscle cell, we give the plasma membrane a special name, and it's called the sarcolemma. Okay? So the sarcolemma is just the plasma membrane of a muscle cell. Two things to note here is anytime you hear the prefix sarco or the prefix myo, those two prefixes mean muscle, something pertaining to muscle. So again, sarco or myo clues you in that you're going to be talking about something with muscle. Okay, so after this sarcolemma, we can talk about the cytoplasm within this sarcolemma. And you can see it most clearly, like right here. Okay, that little area of nothing that's kind of a jelly-type substance. This is the cytoplasm of the muscle cell, and that cytoplasm is called sarcoplasm. Okay, remember, sarco means muscle. So this is the cytoplasm of the muscle cell, sarcoplasm. Okay. You can also see it a little bit right here and right here, but it's harder to see down here. Okay. You can see it up here, okay, and it's between each of these columns, so it's all in there as well. Okay, that's the sarcoplasm. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about are the T-tubules. So these blue tubes right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, those are called your T-tubules. You can also see these blue tubules here. These are all T-tubules as well. T-tubules are your transverse tubules, and they are going to extend deep within this muscle cell, and they will carry the electrical impulses deep into this muscle cell, because you don't want just the exterior part of the muscle cell contracting, you want the whole entire muscle cell contracting. Well, the deep parts, the way back in here, they need to get that signal as well. And the way they get that signal is conducted through these T-tubules deep within that muscle cell. Then the next thing we're going to talk about is the Sarcoplasmic Reticulum. The Sarcoplasmic Reticulum is this webbed network, looks almost like a spider web. So it's all here, here, and here. So that is your Sarcoplasmic Reticulum. This web network is around each myofibril, and we'll talk about a myofibril in just a minute, but it's similar to the smooth endoplasmic reticulum of other cells in the body. And this Sarcoplasmic Reticulum is going to pump calcium out of the muscle cell and back into the Sarcoplasmic Reticulum by binding calcium to a protein called calsequestrian. And this process of pumping this calcium back into this Sarcoplasmic Reticulum is going to need or consume ATP. The next thing we're going to talk about are the terminal cisternae. So you'll see right here at the end of the Sarcoplasmic Reticulum, you have this swollen area right here. That is called your terminal cisternae. It literally means a terminal sac, okay? And this terminal cisternae is where the calcium will be released out of the Sarcoplasmic Reticulum and into the general muscle cell itself, so that it can come in contact with the insides of the myofibrils. So on either side of the T-tubule, you'll see here and here a terminal cisternae. You'll see another one here, another terminal cisternae here, another one here, and here, and here, and here. All of those are terminal cisternae. Now, if you take the two terminal cisternae with the T-tubule in the middle, they form a sandwich of 3 layers. So you'll see a terminal cisternae, then a T-tubule, then a terminal cisternae. So this sandwich of 3 right here is called a triad. Remember, tri means 3. So a triad is a sandwich of a terminal cisternae, a T-tubule, and a terminal cisternae. And you can think of the 2 terminal cisternae as the bread layers and the T-tubule as the meat layer, okay? So this tri-level sandwich here is called a triad. So another triad right here, another triad right here, and another triad right here. Okay? Myofibril. So a myofibril is each one of these tall columns here. So each one of these tall columns is called a myofibril. And if I turn it and you're looking down from the top, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you can see 8, 9, 10 myofibrils. Okay? So these are the cylindrical structures that contain 2 kinds of myofilaments. They have thin filaments and thick filaments. The thin filaments are composed mostly of actin, and the thick filaments are composed primarily of myosin. And we're going to look at that later on in our sarcomere model. Okay, now the sarcomeres, you'll see the sarcomeres here. The sarcomeres are a repeating organization of the filaments, and it's going thick, thin, thick, thin, thick, and it causes these striations that are very characteristic of the muscle cells. And the sarcomeres, these are repeating patterns here, the sarcomeres are the smallest functional unit of the muscle cell. And again, we'll talk more about the sarcomere in another video. Okay, also in this muscle cell model, you see a bunch of mitochondria. So all of these little jelly beans, all of those little jelly bean looking structures, they're almost a pinkish red, and you'll see them up top here. All of these little jelly beans, these are mitochondria. And if you remember from your animal cell unit 1, I believe in AP1, they talked about the mitochondria as being the powerhouse of the cell. This is the quote-unquote factory that produces all of the ATP for the body. And ATP is the energy molecule that the body uses. Because you have to use so much energy to produce muscle contractions, you have to have just tons and tons of mitochondria. And that's why you see so many of them up in this model. It's just to demonstrate to you how many mitochondria are going to be found in one muscle cell. The next structure is this large purple structure right here, and there's another one right here. These are, and you can see a little bit of one right here. These are your nucleuses, or your nuclei. Then you have the nerve fiber. The nerve fiber is this structure right here that runs all the way up, and you'll see through the middle of this nerve fiber right here is the axon. Okay, so the axon is the long yellow tail that comes up right here. So all of this yellow is the axon, and that's part of the nerve cell. Okay, and you have to have a nerve cell that comes in close contact with that muscle cell, so that nerve cell can tell that muscle cell that it needs to contract. This area right here where the nerve cell here comes in close contact with the muscle cell on this side, all of this is called your neuromuscular junction. Neuro meaning nerve, muscular from the muscle cell. So the neuromuscular junction is where the two are meeting, okay? And when they meet, you don't have a nerve cell sitting on top of the muscle cell. You have the nerve cell hovering just above the muscle cell. But all of that area, the nerve cell, the space in between through here, and the muscle cell, all of that together is called the neuromuscular junction, okay? The junction of the nerve cell and the muscle cell. Now this space where my thumb is moving here, the space between the nerve cell and the muscle cell, that's called your synaptic cleft, okay? So here, again, all of this is your neuromuscular junction. So this would be your axon. This right here would be your muscle cell. And you'll see this area here that's kind of a light grayish white. That's the space called the synaptic cleft. This side of the muscle cell where you have the sarcolemma really wrinkled and folded, that is called your motor end plate. That's just the specialized area of the sarcolemma that can produce an action potential in this muscle cell. So you'll see it's always wrinkled and folded. So right here where our sarcolemma is wrinkled, that part of the neuromuscular junction is called the motor end plate. Okay. And that concludes everything with this muscle cell. Y'all have a great day.